Frankie de Koolaid. Species: Ursius frigidauxilium, colloquially known as the Kool-Aid Man. A pop culture mogul, having cameos in Family Guy, The Simpsons, Robot Chicken, and that one Super Bowl ad where he brings about the birth of the Antichrist. A household name, going back decades, begins here. July 10th, 1954. Peter Thomson wins the British Open Golf Championship, the first Australian to do so. Juan Fangio records the then fastest lap of the Silverstone circuit, averaging 100.35 miles per hour. And Marvin Potts, under the direction of General Foods, has just created the evolutionary ancestor to Ursius frigidauxilium, Pitcher Man. The Pitcher Man's first words: a 5-cent packet makes 2 quarts. When adjusted for inflation, that same 5 cents, worth 51 today, could make 4.25 quarts. A good deal that only got better with age. And age it did, for just over 2 decades. July 26, 1974. Pope St. Paul VI leads the Catholic Church. Grand Track 10 has just hit arcades, and Frankie has just evolved, becoming anthropomorphic. Now standing 6 feet tall, weighing in at 11,000 pounds, Frankie is not to be trifled with. The clay brick, used by civilizations dating as far back as Jericho, capable of withstanding forces of up to 3,000 psi, and yet Frankie can shatter them with ease, en route to quench the thirst of children the world over, with tempered glass being able to withstand 24,000 psi of force. An unstoppable force to be reckoned with, and his first stop, Guyana. November 18th, 1978. The People's Temple Agricultural Project has just made international news when 909 people are reported dead, 907 from cyanide poisoning, under the direction of Jim Jones, following the consumption of laced Kool-Aid. These events transpired just weeks after Kool-Aid's successful launch in Venezuela, Guyana's neighbor. Kraft Heinz reports the event has no effect on sales. Kool-Aid continues to sell. While proving Frankie de Koolaid's involvement in the events of Jonestown is difficult at best, it is important to note that all the necessary prerequisites for his appearance were met. Walls, children, and most importantly, thirst. However, there is a link that may insinuate Frankie's direct involvement, as well as his conscious awareness of his actions and their ramifications. The rank of captain is a junior officer position in the Royal Canadian Army. Canadian citizenship can be gained through military service. From at least 1979 to 1981, the Kool-Aid Man was known in Canada as Captain Kool-Aid. And what's most fascinating, Canada has no extradition treaty with Guyana. Not only were Frankie's actions conscious, they were also premeditated. From this information, it can be reasonably deduced that the Kool-Aid Man does not simply act because of an inherent biological need to administer his fluids to parched children, but rather he abides by some kind of code or moral compass separate from our own. The Adventures of Kool-Aid Man, a short series that ran for 9 issues, 3 under Marvel Comics, and 6 under Archie. The plot structure of each comic is quite simple. The antagonists, an alien group known as the Thirsties, locked in perpetual combat with Frankie de Kool-Aid, attempt to dehydrate and overheat any person engaging in outdoor activity, causing misery and often leading to infighting. Kool-Aid Man comes in after being summoned by children who call his name, smashing through the largest wall in proximity, and then defeats the Thirsties before offering a communion of Kool-Aid to all involved. These comics also contain some of the most convoluted connect-the-dots puzzles I've ever seen. Like, seriously, what the fuck is this? A few things stand out throughout the series. Frankie owns a helicopter. Given the time period, it was likely a Bell 206A Jet Ranger, the commercial counterpart to the Bell CH-139 Jet Ranger, used by the Canadian military from 1972 to 1995, which Frankie would already know how to operate from his time in service. He also owns a mansion-sized headquarters on a street named after himself, which we can assume is a private road. He accepts and seems to revel in the physical affection of children, and is completely detached from the consequences his acts of destruction have on the daily lives of the middle-class residents of Small Town, the comic's setting. Frankie the Koolaid is clearly an ultra-rich billionaire. The question then becomes, where did Frankie acquire his fortune? In issue 2, the Thirsties utilize a time machine to attempt to stop the Boston Tea Party, an event in American history believed to have helped catalyze the Revolutionary War after failing to crash a 4th of July cookout due to the Kool-Aid Man's intervention. This would, in theory, help prevent the American Revolution from taking off, thus stopping the 4th of July from ever being a national holiday, and more importantly, would place modern America under British rule. The Thirsties, who revel in making everyone as miserable as they are British. Kool-Aid Man, following his service in the Canadian Armed Forces, is tasked by various global governments, who he was put into contact with through military connections, to deter and defeat the British extremist group known as the Thirsties. His compensation, a blank check. This allows Frankie the affluent lifestyle his possessions and behavior indicate he leads. 1990. The last comic in the series is released by Archie, and the Thirsties are seemingly defeated, having not been referenced since the final Marvel comic in 1985. The new antagonist, Scorch, is also seemingly defeated. Frankie has finished his mission. The British terror cell was defeated. Frankie the Kool-Aid would be notably absent for the remainder of the 90s, returning in the 2000s, making an effort to seem more relatable, while still managing to flaunt his wealth from his previous mercenary-esque lifestyle. And just like that, Frankie became just another brand icon, hiding in plain sight, never answering for his past transgressions. Frankie would have a brief disappearance from March 9th to April 6th of 2020, having only 2 sightings in that time. Once, vandalizing a sandcastle in Santa Monica, and again on April 6th, wandering through Coney Island. In his hand, a new Kool-Aid flavor. Knowing Frankie himself is cherry-flavored, it makes the ambiguous question of where he sources the other flavors all that more disturbing. What did he spend his absence doing? Are there other Kool-Aid men being harvested for their fluids, only to have them sold for pennies on the gallon? How deep does the pitcher go? Perhaps we will never know the true darkness of the Pitcher Man.